They thought she was just a grease-stain mechanic. They mocked the faded tattoo on her arm like it meant nothing. They didn't know that it had once been classified. They didn't know she used to disappear enemies in countries that don't exist on maps. The sun was merciless that morning at Camp Pendleton. The kind of California heat that turns steel, scalding, and silent sharp. In the heart of the motor pool, where trucks sat like sleeping beasts, Ellie Nash, 38, quiet, competent, anonymous, was elbow deep in the belly of a broken Humvee. Sweat mixed with old oil on her brow. Her forearms, corded with years of quiet labor, bore a single faded symbol, a coiled serpent wrapped tightly around a weathered compass. No one took her seriously. Private Miller, barely old enough to shave, smirked as he sauntered by. "Nice ink, Nash," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "Get that from a vending machine? Or was it your first boyfriend?" The other recruits laughed. That cruel kind of laughter not born of wit, but insecurity. Ellie didn't look up. She just tightened a bolt with a slow, even motion. "Calm. What is that even supposed to be?" Miller pressed, emboldened by her silence. "Some kind of mechanic mojo charm?" More chuckles. Someone muttered, "Maybe it keeps her engine spirits happy." Ellie wiped her hands on a rag. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft. "It's functional. That was it. Nothing more. Not a threat. Not a protest. But it was enough to freeze Miller mid-snicker. There was something in her tone, not defiance, not anger, but finality. Like a line drawn silently in the sand. But Miller didn't get the message. No one did, really. Not until he showed up. Later that week, a storm rolled through the base, not in the sky, but in the form of Colonel Thomas Everett, newly assigned commanding officer of Pendleton. Tall, silver-haired. His medals said hero. His eyes said, "I've seen hell," and didn't blink. Rumor had it. He'd requested Pendleton after a tour, so classified, even the Joint Chiefs wouldn't speak of it. But no one questioned the why. When a man like Everett walks into your base, you just stand straight and make sure your boots are polished. On Thursday, at exactly 1,400 hours, he walked into the motor pool. It was supposed to be a routine inspection. Nothing more. Sergeant Bill Hanley salted the earth, proud, meticulous, marched beside him, giving the colonel a crisp rundown of operations. "Overhere's our lead mechanic, Ellie Nash," Hanley said, nodding toward the woman under the gutted transport truck. "Best hands I've seen in 20 years. Ellie didn't pause her work. Her forearms were exposed, the serpent tattoo staring out beneath fluorescent lights like a quiet ghost from another life. Colonel Everett stopped walking. The silence was immediate. Heavy. Hanley blinked mid-sentence. "Sir," but Everett didn't speak. Not yet. He stepped closer, slowly, like a man approaching something sacred or dangerous. "Ellie Nash," he said at last. Her wrench stopped. Slowly, she slid out from under the truck, stood, and came to attention. Their eyes met for half a second. That's all it took. Recognition. The colonel's voice changed. "Where did you get that tattoo?" 1,000 tiny sounds fell away. The clinking tools. The whirring fans. Even Miller, halfway through a joke, fell silent. Ellie responded with a soldier's discipline. "It's personal, sir." But Everett's stare didn't break. He knew that mark. Not from any bar or tattoo shop. No, he'd seen it burned into a wall during an extraction mission that never made the reports. He'd seen it in blood, in silence, and in the eyes of 5 others who made it out alive. Without a word, he began to remove his jacket. The motor pool held its breath. First the outer coat, then his undershirt, and then there it was. On his shoulder, the same serpent, the same compass. Old, weathered, real. A collective gasp rippled through the garage. Sergeant Hanley's mouth opened, but no words came out. Colonel Everett didn't look at anyone else. Just Ellie. "She's not logistics," he said quietly. "She's Unit Echo. There were only 6 of us, and I thought she was dead." You could have heard a wrench drop. That moment when every mocking word, every dismissive glance, every insult about her tattoo, her silence, her solitude collapsed under the weight of reality. And the quiet woman they'd laughed at had just become the most dangerous person in the room. No one moved. No one breathed. Colonel Everett stood bare-chested in the middle of the motor pool, the serpent on his shoulder, catching the light like some ancient omen. Ellie stood still, hands at her sides, eyes forward. Hanley finally found his voice. "Sir, what is Unit Echo?" Everett turned, slowly pulling his shirt back on. His voice was low, deliberate. You don't have clearance for that, Sergeant. Then to Ellie, without looking away, he added, I need to speak with you. Privately. Ellie gave a crisp nod, calm as ever. Yes, sir. Hanley opened his mouth to protest, but Everett's gaze stopped him cold. This stays between us, the colonel said. None of what you just saw leaves this building. That's not a suggestion. The mechanics scattered, murmuring and glancing back like they'd seen a ghost. Miller, pale as drywall, stared at the tattoo on Ellie's arm as if it had just begun to hiss. Everett didn't wait. He turned and walked out. Ellie followed, steps even, her mind already calculating. It had been 2 years since anyone spoke the words Unit Echo. Longer since anyone had looked her in the eye and recognized her. The colonel led her into Building 47, a low-slung, unmarked facility near the admin wing. She knew the type. Constructed to look forgettable. Concrete. Narrow windows. Inside, walls so thick you couldn't hear a scream. Second floor. No windows. 1 table. 2 chairs. Soundproofed. Shielded. Monitored by no one unless they wanted it monitored. Close the door, Everett said. Ellie complied. Then she sat, hands clasped, spine straight. The colonel stood for a long time, just looking at her. I read the reports, he said finally. After the Canyon mission, they said you didn't make it out. Ellie's voice was steady. Officially, I didn't. Everett exhaled, quietly. You faked your death? I was given a choice. Her tone never rose. It never needed to. Either vanish or be made to vanish. The colonel nodded slowly. He'd been around long enough to understand what that meant. They always feared the ones who lived, he muttered. He sat. The weight of everything sank between them. Why motor pool? He asked. Ellie gave the faintest trace of a smile. No one notices the mechanic, and machines don't betray you. Everett's eyes softened, just for a moment, but then they sharpened again. We have a problem, he said. You're not the only one in hiding. Ellie said nothing. She waited. There were 6 of us left after Echo disbanded, he continued. 2 died later. That left 4. You. Me. Harper, he's at Fort Bragg. Jackson's in Germany. And now, he reached into a folder, slid a single photo across the table. Ellie looked down. It was a surveillance still. Blurry. Zoomed in. A man in civilian clothes outside a military base in Germany. Jackson. Her old teammate. Across the image, 1 word tag. They're watching us, Everett said. Who? Ellie asked. We don't know. Could be foreign intelligence. Could be a contractor. Could be internal. He leaned in. Whoever they are, they're asking the wrong questions in the right places. Ellie didn't flinch. What do they want? Either to find us or erase us. He opened a secure envelope and slid a set of printed files across the table. These profiles were intercepted this week. Yours. Mine. The others. Detailed. Accurate. Down to sleeping quarters and meal times. She scanned the pages. Her entire life, all of it laid bare. Every routine. Every cover story. Every fabricated rank and transfer. Her voice barely changed. They broke the firewalls. Or someone gave them the keys. That landed harder. For a moment, the quiet in the room shifted. It wasn't just operational silence anymore. It was dread. Ellie tapped the page. This is war doctrine prep. Everett nodded grimly. Exactly. And then came the question that changed everything. He looked her dead in the eyes. If it comes to it, can you still do what needs to be done? Ellie's hands didn't tremble. Her eyes didn't shift. But something flickered across her expression, not doubt, not fear, just the ghost of a memory. Her voice was clear. If I couldn't, I'd already be dead. Everett leaned back. I'm being given provisional authority to reactivate select assets, he said. Nothing on paper. Nothing official. But if we're going to stop whatever this is, we'll need Echo back. Echo. The name rang out like a whisper in a cave. Ellie's lips tightened. That name had once meant something. Something violent. Something necessary. She stood. I'll need equipment. You'll have it. I'll need access. You've already been cleared. She nodded once, then paused. Sir, if they're coming for us, then they've already been watching this base. Everett nodded solemnly. I know. Then it's not just us at risk. I know that too. Outside, the sun still baked the pavement. The trucks still sat in line. Hanley was probably back to checking reports, acting like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. The mechanic was gone, and the operative had just woken up. The next morning, Camp Pendleton looked the same. But it wasn't. Beneath the surface of routine, the morning formations, the maintenance reports, the shouting from the parade field, something had shifted. Quietly, irreversibly. Ellie Nash walked back in the motor pool wearing the same coveralls, her hair pulled tight, her hands steady. But now, every movement had a different weight. A calculation. A readiness. Sergeant Hanley greeted her with a half-hearted attempt at normal. "Morning, Nash," he said, eyeing her carefully. "Everything squared away with the colonel?" "Maintenance protocols," she said simply, not breaking stride. He nodded slowly, but his eyes lingered. Everyone's did. The way she checked the toolbox. The way she scanned the lot before walking between vehicles. The way she positioned herself, always near an exit, always with something between her and open ground. It was subtle, but unmistakable. That afternoon, during lunch, she sat alone, just as she always had. Back to the wall, facing the room, observing. That's when she saw him. Civilian clothes. Neat but too neat. Hair cut sharp. Posture too straight for someone who didn't serve. His tray of food untouched. Eyes on her, but never directly. Most wouldn't notice. Ellie noticed. She took 2 more bites, wiped her mouth, and stood. Didn't look his way. Didn't change her pace. But in the reflection of the vending machine glass, she watched him turn to speak into a phone. He was reporting in. They were here. By the time she returned to the motor pool, Sergeant Hanley was waiting. "Colonel Everett wants to see you. Right now." His tone was different this time. Sharper. Like he knew something was happening. Ellie met Everett in his office. The blinds were drawn. The door shut the moment she entered. "We've got a problem," he said, skipping pleasantries. He slid a manila folder across the desk. She opened it. Surveillance photos. One of her, taken this morning. Another of her quarters. Another of the man from the cafeteria. "We intercepted a transmission," Everett said. "They've got profiles. Detailed. Yours, mine. Harper. Jackson. And they're moving." Ellie scanned the pages. The kind of detail that didn't come from public databases. These came from inside. Deployment logs. Psychological evals. Codenames. Field reports that were supposed to have been destroyed. "This is internal," she said. Everett nodded. "At least one of them is one of ours. A traitor. Or worse, a handler gone rogue. They've already surveilled Harper's apartment in North Carolina," he continued. And Jackson's routine in Germany was logged down to the hour. Ellie sat, heart steady but gaze cold. "They're preparing a strike. Or a sweep," Everett said, "to clean up loose ends." Her fingers curled against the edge of the desk. And were the loose ends. A knock. It was Hanley, red in the face, eyes wide. "Sir, we've got an issue at the cafeteria. One of the contractors just collapsed. Another says he's missing his ID badge. And MPs are saying the surveillance grid was down for 12 minutes this morning." Everett stood. "Pull up base lockdown protocols." Quietly. "No alarm. I want eyes on every exit." Hanley hesitated. "Sir, is something wrong?" Everett paused, then turned to Ellie. "You want to show him?" She nodded once. And for the first time in 2 years, Ellie Nash rolled up her sleeve, not just partway, but fully exposing the full mark. The serpent wrapped the compass like a vice. Not decorative, not random. It was etched with coordinates. Invisible unless under UV. Hanley blinked. "Wait, that's not just ink. That's a kill code," Everett said. "Unit Echoes Identifier. There are only 3 of us left." Hanley stepped back. "Jesus." Everett turned back to Ellie. "We need to move you to a secure location. Now. You've been burned." But Ellie shook her head. "If I disappear, they'll accelerate the operation. The best way to bait them is to stay right where they think I am." Everett stared at her not as a commander, but as a peer. "I forgot how dangerous you were." She looked him dead in the eye. "I didn't." That night, she slept in a different room. Windowless. Shielded. Monitored. But not even that felt secure. Because by morning they'd find out she was never meant to stay hidden. Back at the motor pool the next day, everything looked normal. But the air was tight. Every laugh sounded forced. Every eye lingered a little too long. And then it happened. Mid-morning, a black SUV pulled into the lot. Civilian plates. Unmarked. 2 men stepped out. Civilian suits. Government-grade posture. They approached Hanley with confidence. We're here to speak with Specialist Nash. Routine clearance audit. Hanley frowned. She's not a specialist. She's civilian tech. One of the men showed a badge too fast to verify. She used to be something else. Ellie was already walking toward them. Calm. Measured. I don't recall requesting an audit, she said flatly. One of them smiled. We're not here for requests. Behind her, Everett stepped into the open. That's far enough. The two men turned. One stiffened. Recognition. Colonel Everett. Director Everett, he corrected sharply. This is a military installation. You're out of jurisdiction. The taller of the two agents narrowed his eyes. You can't stop this. Everett took 2 steps forward. Try me. That's when Hanley, confused, shocked, whispered to another mechanic. What the hell is going on? The reply was hushed. That's not just any woman. That's Echo. For a moment, no one moved. The 2 men in suits stood rigid, their confidence bleeding out like air from a ruptured tire. Colonel Everett's voice had landed like a silent explosion, not with volume, but with authority forged in places no one dared talk about. Ellie Nash stood between them all. Still, calm, a mechanic's uniform, grease-streaked sleeves, and a serpent tattoo that had just cracked open the truth. The taller agent shifted. This isn't your call, Everett. Everett stepped forward, ice in his tone. It became my call the moment you brought threat protocols onto my base without clearance. The second agent, younger, less composed, tried to pivot. We were told she posed a risk. Everett didn't blink. She's a risk, but not to us. At that, the mechanic team, Hanley included, began to understand. Their gazes shifted from the outsiders to Ellie, the woman they'd mocked, the one they'd underestimated. Hanley's jaw clenched. What the hell have we been working with for the past 2 years? Ellie finally spoke. A wrench and a warning. She turned to the agents. Her voice was quiet. You made a mistake coming here. The taller agent stepped closer, too close. Let me guess. You're going to make a call? Pull some strings? You think you're still important? Ellie didn't answer. She didn't need to, because Everett stepped in calmly, precisely, and handed the agent a folder. It was stamped with a seal that didn't officially exist. The agent opened it. Read 1 page. Then another. His face drained of color. Everett leaned close. You've just tried to detain a Tier 1 black operative without authorization. That's not just reckless. It's criminal. The younger agent stammered. We were told she was dormant. Ellie's eyes didn't flinch. Dormant isn't the same as dead. The SUV pulled out minutes later, fast, quiet, and without further protest. And just like that, the threat for now was gone. But the motor pool wasn't the same. Hanley approached slowly, his expression unreadable. That true? He asked. What they said? Ellie didn't answer directly. Instead, she wiped her hands on a rag, tossed it in the bin, and turned toward the next truck. Get the generator on this one checked, she said evenly. It's pulling too much load on startup. Hanley stood there a moment, stunned. Then he gave the smallest nod, not of command, but of respect. And he walked away. The others followed. Quiet. Watchful, and this time reverent. That evening, in the windowless conference room of Building 47, Everett laid out what came next. The threat hadn't disappeared. It had simply backed off. For now. There's going to be more, he said. We stirred the hornet's nest. Ellie studied the files in front of her. Timetables, surveillance logs, digital intrusion paths, movement patterns too smooth to be amateur. They're not looking to expose us, she said. They're looking to eliminate us. Everett agreed. But they didn't expect one thing. What's that? That we'd still be alive. Ellie glanced at the map projected on the wall, 6 red markers, where 6 former Echo members had once been. Now, only 3 remain green. It didn't sit right. Reactivating Echo won't make us safe, she said. No, Everett replied. But it might give us the power to choose how it ends. There was silence. Then he asked quietly, why did you come back? Ellie didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her forearm. The ink faded, the edges blurred, but the symbol remained. The serpent was never about who I was, she said. It was about what I couldn't walk away from. And then, for the first time, she smiled not with pride, but with peace. You know, she added, I didn't mind the motor pool. Machines make sense. They don't lie. They don't change sides. They just need the right hands. Everett nodded. But when the mission calls, she stood. You answer. By week's end, Ellie Nash was no longer seen at the motor pool. Officially, she was assigned to a logistics task force for a classified readiness review. Unofficially, she was back in the shadows. But her absence didn't go unnoticed. In the days that followed, the jokes about her tattoo stopped. The mocking silence at lunch was replaced by uncertain respect. Miller, the recruit who once teased her, now checked over every tool twice before clocking in. Hanley kept her workspace exactly as she left it, clean, orderly, untouched. And on the locker Ellie once used, someone quietly taped a note. Echo, we see you now. Some weeks later, during a routine command briefing, a visiting officer asked Everett a casual question. What happened to your motor pool mechanic? Everett didn't blink. She wasn't a mechanic, he said. She was insurance. Ellie Nash's face never appeared in the press. Her name never showed up in citation rolls. But deep within the unseen corridors of American security, her signature reactivated code lit up again. Echo 1. Active. Her file was moved from archived, non-threatening to Tier 1 access operational. And somewhere far from command posts and red carpets, she prepared again. Not to be seen, not to be thanked, but to end the job no one else was willing to admit existed. She never raised her voice. She raised the standard. And the world would never mock the serpent again. Sometimes, the strongest warriors don't walk in with medals on their chest or stripes on their sleeves. They walk in quiet, covered in grease, mocked, dismissed, ignored. But when the storm hits, they're the ones who stand still. Ellie Nash never asked for recognition. She never needed applause. Because true greatness doesn't perform. It prepares. It waits patiently in the shadows until the world remembers why silence is sometimes the loudest form of power. So next time you're tempted to judge someone by what they look like, or what you think they used to be, ask yourself, what truth might be hiding beneath the surface? Because dignity doesn't always wear a uniform. And the people you overlook today may be the very ones who'll save you tomorrow. What would you have done if you were in Ellie's position? Would you have stayed hidden or stood back up when the world needed you again? Let us know in the comments.